Hey everybody, this is Geneva of Geneva's Closet Talk Show. Please make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to Geneva's Closet if you haven't already done so right here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Facebook at what? At Geneva's Closet. And you can email me at genevascloset22@gmail.com. Now, let's get into the news. Today we are doing book reading number 2 of Men Will Lie When the Truth Will Do, The King, His Queen, and His Other Woman, written by the other woman, author TERRI Smith. She is the ex-boo thing of actor, comedian, and host Steve Harvey, and this book is detailing their 9-year relationship. If you haven't already done so and you haven't checked out book reading 1, make sure you go over to Geneva's Closet channel and check out the video entitled Steve Harvey and Side Chick Relationship Revealed. Other than that, check this out. It was almost showtime when he arrived in town, so I would have to wait until later to talk to him. But as soon as we got back to the hotel room after the show, he got on the phone. He was on the phone for hours talking to his manager of his club in Oakland. Attendance wasn't up to where they could turn a profit, so he made more calls trying to find out where the problems were. By now, it was 3 o'clock in the morning, so I went to bed. When I woke up in the morning, his side of the bed hadn't been touched. I got up and found him asleep on the sofa. He was still in his performance clothes. From the looks of things, his night hadn't gone well, and I didn't have the heart to disturb him. Almost an hour later, his pager went off and woke him up. He looked at the number and said he had some calls to make. Carrie, if you don't mind, I'd like to be alone right now. No problem, I said. I went back to the bedroom and got dressed, then packed. I picked up my overnight bags and walked over to the chair where he was sitting. I'm going to go now. Then I bent over and with an intimate kiss whispered, I love you. I love you too, Carrie. Thanks for understanding. Always, sweetheart. Call me if you need me. Already out of his thoughts before I had left the room, I went home feeling sad and mad. Sad because he was hurting and I didn't know how to help. Mad because the club and employees, so essential to his dream of success, were letting it crumble. It's funny. I was pregnant and confused, but my whole focus was on his well being. He needed me in his life to help him through his personal pain, the kind that the public never sees. Climbing the ladder to success was no catwalk. The higher he went, the more pressure there was. New York's morning radio show on WGCK and a top rated weekly sitcom were almost within reach. But he had to get there first. The next day, I went back to the hotel with every intention of telling him I was pregnant. But when I arrived, he was packing. When he looked into my eyes, I could tell by the glassiness that he had been crying. Only 2 things could touch him deep enough to really hurt: his family and his child. I asked him what was wrong, and he said that he and his ex-wife had an argument about when and how often she would allow him to spend time with his kid, and that he was going to Newark to see her. The courts gave us shared custody, but because he lives with her, she tries to manipulate me. Whenever she is pissed off, for whatever reason she digs up, it seems there are plans for my son to do something with her family. He is busy whenever I want to spend time with him. He's a 9-year-old boy. How important can anything other than school and church be to him? I was reluctant to answer at first because of the way he was throwing things and shoving his clothes in a suitcase. I don't know, honey. Do you want to know what her real problem is? Back when I was married to her, there wasn't a job that I could do right that pleased her. When I told her I wanted to do stand-up, she pretty much called me a failure and said that I wouldn't make it. Now that we are divorced, she hates the fact that I'm not failing. Now that I have moved on, she uses my son to manipulate me whenever she pleases. He had Delta Airlines schedule book in his hands trying to look up the next flight to New Jersey. Calm down, baby. Here, sit down and let me do this. The next flight leaves in 2 hours. Thank you. It hurts my mother when she can't see her grandchild. The judge told her I pay more child support than the court requires. And guess what else? I also pay her alimony, not because I have to, but because she is the mother of my son. He is my son, and nobody keeps me from my child. Then, as he slammed the suitcase shut, I heard, I want to have more children someday. But the next time, I'm going to make damn sure I can get along with the woman because I ain't never going to be manipulated again. He was hurting, and there was nobody else for him to turn to but me. I helped him pack and took him to the airport without adding anything more to the load of emotional baggage he was taking along with him. His departure was unexpected. I had counted on more time, more chance to sit him down and talk, to tell him what I was feeling and why. But as always, His feelings took precedence. I kept my own to myself and let him go. But I needed to talk to someone. When I got home, I phoned a coworker at the cruise hotel on her layover in Orlando, Florida. At the time, she was married to a comedian, but they later divorced. She and I often talked about how it was dating someone that lives in and out of a suitcase. Elena was raised in Newark and knew Stefan and his ex-wife. I told her that I was pregnant and what I now felt I had to do. You're pregnant? Damn. Is it Stefan's? Yes. Wait, girl, before you say anything else, give me a chance to take off this uniform. Our flight was delayed and I just walked in the door when you called. I guess my news upset her because she slammed the phone down and caused a loud clang in my ear. Now I'm back, she said, while huffing and breathing heavy. That was fast. Girl, I didn't even bother to put my clothes on after what you said. I couldn't think. I ripped off my uniform, washed my face, and brushed my teeth. Now I'm back. What did he say when you told him? Oh, crap. What did you tell your mother? Well, I haven't told my mother, and I'm not going to. Why not? Every time you see some kid on our flight, you talk about how happy your mother would be if you had a child and made her a grandmother. Yeah, I know that would make her happy, but it's not the right time for me to lay this on Stefan. And like I told you, I'm not going to have it, I said. Why? And why the hell haven't you told him? Because I'm okay with having the baby, but he's got problems with his ex, his kid, and the club. I can't tell my mother because she really likes him and I don't want her to be hurt. Plus, I don't want her to blame him. He's really crazy right now dealing with it all, and I love him. Truthfully, me being pregnant now could tip him over to loony. Shit. You worried about him going loony? The news has got me halfway there myself. I don't give a rat's ass about him, the club, his trifling ass ex, or his damn kid. I was sitting on the floor in my living room with my back up against the couch, knees drawn up, and my elbows propped on them. One hand held the phone to my ear while the other hand rubbed my forehead the entire time she was venting. Carrie, all of your reasons for not telling him are his problems, not yours. Yes, I know you're right, but I love him. And having this baby now, I stopped because what I was going to say was hard to hear coming out of my own mouth. It's just not a good time for him right now. Our relationship is only 2 years old. He's traveling for a living. I'm traveling. His career is blooming, and I don't want to be the cause of hindering it in any way. Wow, Carrie. This is pretty heavy load all around, but especially to take on yourself. Are you sure that you don't want to talk to him? Yeah, I thought it over, and it's for the best. He's got all this stuff laid on him right now, and Elena, I don't ever want him to know, okay? Mm-hmm. I am here for you, girl. Let's just get that straight. Thank you. My appointment is on Wednesday at the Women's Care Clinic downtown. The center is no more than 35 to 45 minutes from my door. I don't have to be there until 9 a.m. Would you mind going with me? I need someone to drive me home. Of course I will. I'll pick you up. Okay? You have given me a lot to chew on. Girl, I know, and I'm sorry. Please don't let this spoil your trip. In the prep room, lying on the gurney before they took me back for surgery, I thought about what could be. Procreation. A daughter or son would add purpose to my life and hold me accountable for his or hers. And I would put a twinkle in my mother's eyes that would erase any tears, if it could be. I know for the rest of my life I would want to be a better person. Please, my son or daughter, please don't hate your mother or father. Please. I was lying there distraught, and suddenly I felt sleepy. When I woke up and realized that I was in the recovery room, I started crying because I don't even remember leaving the prep room. It was over. It will never be. When the doctor signed my release, I got back into my clothes and Elena drove me home. She made small talk the whole way, glancing over at me as she did and alternately frowning or biting her lip. I could see her out of the corner of my eyes, but wrapped in a cottony feeling of disbelief, I stared out of the windshield and let her natter on. After parking in my driveway, Elena came around and opened my door. Carrie, let me help you inside. Would you like me to sit with you for a while or even stay the night? No, I'm fine, but thanks for the offer. Most likely, I'm going to go to sleep all night anyway. I dressed up a smile and Hope she take the hint. Okay, you call me if you need anything. Thanks, I will. Okay, bye, and sleep well. Sleep well. That's what she said. And I did sleep. I didn't cry the entire night about what was never going to be. I didn't tell him what I had done. We went on with our lives, dealing with his pain together, while I kept my own to myself. The things that I did for love. Why didn't I sit him down and tell him? Even though I knew it wasn't the right time for us to have a baby, I should have allowed him to be part of the decision. Instead, I took the responsibility on myself when I went to the hotel room and saw him. He was so upset about everything that was going on in his life, his club, his wife, and even the lawsuit with his ex manager. I did the noble thing. Rather than putting any more stress on him, I decided his life would be much better without this new complication. How could I have been that naive, that stupid, that blind? Nothing in my life was the same after the abortion. I punished myself over and over. I moved from place to place, never feeling right, never feeling settled. Every child was a constant reminder of what I did, what could have been. In trying to find some peace in my life, I changed everything in my life, my home, my friends, even my career. It was a time when I felt like I was on a turntable that was spinning and I couldn't get off. Savannah, Georgia in 1994 is one of my first real memories of us spending time together that wasn't subject to the demands of my having to leave now or pack for him to leave. In the years to come, Savannah would prove to hold fond memories for both of us, but for different reasons. Stefan was firmly on the ladder to success. I was only halfway up the rings to making our own life together perfect for him. He performed 6 sold out shows, 2 a night in 3 days. Later, he changed to only 2 nights, but 3 shows, both evenings. It was exhausting for him, sustaining that performance energy, which made rest and solitude all the more important. Showtime. One night in the spring of 1995, I drove to southern Georgia to watch him perform. I had gotten accustomed to how he would make sure everyone knew who I was before I even arrived. It was heavy stuff. The deference they showed, making sure I had the best seat, a soft drink. Nothing was too much trouble for Stefan Harvey's lady. I had hardly been inside the door before someone would come rushing up, all smiles and hands out, ready to draw me into the room. Hi, are you Carrie? You must be Carrie. Yes, I am, I replied, but how did you know? I'd always asked, even though I knew. It was such fun to watch their faces. Oh, he described you to a T. I like to think the enthusiasm that followed a brief pause was because they were remembering Stefan's description and agreeing with it. I parked my dirty 1992 Volkswagen Golf behind the club in a reserved spot and got out, pulling down my body-fitting low-cut Donna Karan mid-thigh plum satin wrap dress. Just before I opened the door to step out, I slicked my lips with a shade of gloss called Passion Plum. I used a small mirror on the visor of the car. I hadn't seen him in the 3 months since the abortion. I paged his number that whole time and left messages, but there was no answer. Then out of the blue, he called yesterday and asked me to join him tonight. Now that I'm here, there are butterflies in my stomach. It matters that when he looks at me, he still sees me as sexy because I'm not sure why he's been so distant. I know that for me, I had needed the time to rest, both mentally and physically. I had no idea what he had done in that time. Inside the door of the club, I smiled at the brother standing beside the hostess who was checking IDs and collecting the money. He was sporting a Carl Kanai's urban design shirt and dress jeans and tapping his watch. Hi, I'm Carrie Strong, and I'm here to see. Oh, yes, Miss Carrie. Mr. Harvell asked me to wait here at the door for you. He would like to see you in his dressing room before he goes on. Then I'll come and get you seated before the show, if that is okay with you. That's fine, thank you. We walked across the center of the room where the audience was sitting and passed in between people standing in line at the bar for drinks. Eventually, my escort and I got to a door in the back corner marked private. Without a word, he motioned me to go through. Oh, well, even Cleopatra had to work at conquering some men. As I walked through the backstage doors and down the halls, I watched the people watching me. It used to make me self conscious until I decided to imagine myself as one of the people watching me. Would they be seeing the same woman that Stefan had described to the club staff? Style is a big part of his career, which made how I looked very important to him. Image was everything. I came to know what image he wanted shown to him and to everyone else. It became part of the game that we played to heighten his rush before we went out on stage. If someone was in the room with him, that just added more spice. I could picture how it would be before I ever laid a hand to the doorknob. I knew actually where and how he would be sitting in the room. So I would turn the doorknob slowly and give a lazy push. Just as I imagined he was far back in the room, sitting in a chair that faced the door. I am standing in the door frame, but I don't move. Our eyes meet, connect, explore. If someone is in the room with him, his head moves just a fraction to the left or right, and suddenly the guests leave the room. Not a word is spoken. His eyes never leave mine. The door closes and we're alone. Slowly, I remove my coat if I'm wearing one. If not, then I just stand there, letting our eyes close the distance between us. It's all a part of our game. I take my first step towards his chair, where he sits back, legs spread like a typical man. There's a little more swing and a lot less speed to my stride. The showman likes his private show. He stands up, his timing impeccable as I step into his arms. Hey, Carrie, thanks for coming. My pleasure. That always touched me. It didn't matter if I traveled hours to see him or had just seen him in the hotel an hour ago. He always said, thank you. Now that I'm here, I wait for him to direct how the scene will play out. Sometimes, before he went out on stage, he just wanted to see me and chat for a few minutes. But that only happened if we had been together earlier in the day and had already had sex. If I arrived just before a show, like I did that night, my purpose was to give him a blowjob. It was all that his schedule left time for. There was no making love when you couldn't make time, but I never knew if his urge would change. There were times when we spent the earlier part of the day making love several times before he rushed off to the club while I was left in the bed. And when I arrived later, before his last show, even though we already had sex several times that day, we played the game by all his rules: the door, the eye contact, the walk. But I had lowered myself for and to him in one way or another, not just this night, but every night we were together. He maneuvered my head into position, and I obliged. Trip to Africa. I kissed him on the cheek and left his dressing room with the escort who showed up to take me to my seat. Depending on the class of the club, it might be a theater layout or cigarette scar tables with beer bottle rings on them. This time it was a round table and chair setting with white linen cloths and centerpieces with candles in them. By the time the hostess and waiters were done fussing over me, it was obvious to the other people at the table that they were sitting with someone important. I could see the discreet nudges and casual whispering into their neighbor's ear. Except for one man, I noticed him glance at me, then away, then back again. I turned towards the spotlight on stage and ignored him. Then he leaned over almost in my face, except that he was staring at my chest. Excuse me, he mumbled. Then with another gust of boozy breath, excuse me, but I just gotta say, he's a lucky brother. His head jerked towards the stage. There are parts of the South where accents and dialect make everyday English almost unrecognizable, and it seemed like he was one of the natives. I wasn't sure I understood what he was saying and didn't much care if I did, so I just said thank you and cut him off by turning back to the front of the room. There are people who just don't get the message. After another long glance at my breast, he looked up at me and said, I knew when you walked in, you was with him, repeating his head tilt towards the stage. Okay, sometimes to get off the hook, you got to take their bait. I asked him how he could tell, and he said, girl, look round this room, ain't one woman in here as beautiful as you. It wasn't perfect, but in a twisted way, It was a compliment. Thank you, I said. Africa? In the running pattern of lines, I heard Stefan say something about a recent trip to Africa and a lady friend. He had added a new part to his act, a story about how he had just returned from a trip and how exciting it was. He went on to tell what he experienced, what it meant to him to be able to go, and what a good time he and his lady friend were shown over there in Africa. Yes, that was what I thought I heard. He had said, and his lady. With everyone in the room laughing, except me, he continued on, relating a whole chain of observations, comparisons, and exclamations. Then he said it again, him and his lady. Even my southern admirer was laughing. Then he looked me in my eyes and said, wow, man, I bet you had fun in Africa. I thought, oh, now he looks at me and not my chest. For a minute, the room became a dark tunnel with a tiny light at the end. I could see people laughing, but I was on the other end and not close enough to hear them. The tiny light at the end was focused on Stefan. No, someone answered. Could it have been me? I'm not the lady friend that he took to Africa. I was just another part of the audience, nobody he had to worry about in particular, and on he went about the good time and adventures that he and his woman had on their trip. That's when I first became aware that there was someone else. When he got back to the hotel, he expected a little contact sport, but I pushed him away. Africa was still on my mind. Did you go to Africa, Stefan? With a startled look on his face, he asked, what are you talking about? Who told you that? And he really was surprised by my question. But that was Stefan. His performing life and his private life were kept so far apart that he couldn't conceive of one impacting the other. It was at that moment I realized this man will lie to try and trick you when the truth will do. Somewhere along the way, I had misinterpreted his thoughtful pauses before answering a question. What he was really doing was figuring out if I had already been told something that would conflict with what he planned to tell me. What am I talking about? You told me and everyone else in that room about you and your woman's trip to Africa. Oh, come on, Carrie. That's a part of my act, and you know it. I make things up as I go along. That's stuff that I write for laughs and then work it into my routine with my schedule. When do I have time to go to Africa? You tell me when. I would love to take you on a vacation, but I don't have time. All I wanted was a straight yes or no answer. Instead, I got a lecture on how he works material into his stage show. The man should have been a magician. He could answer a question in such a way that you ended up feeling guilty for asking. To this day, I don't know if he and his lady ever went to Africa. When I look back, I take responsibility for my own actions. I willingly gave away the power and control over my life. I let him dictate what I would wear, how I would behave, eventually what I would be. I trusted him. He knew where he was going. I just didn't realize he'd leave me behind. I decided to quit the airlines and get involved in something that would keep my feet on the ground. While traveling for a living and staying in different hotels, I had a chance to observe concierge and the variety of services that they provide. I wanted to start a business that would provide a range of personal services to be an executive assistant, planner for the elite, VIPs, and executive types with busy lives. But before resigning, I discussed my idea with Stefan. After going over the pros and cons with me, he gave me his support. One of the things he liked best was that I got to keep my traveling privileges because I had been with the airline for 10 years. He even thought of the name. It only took him 10 minutes to come with executive concierge. I added ink to the name once I filed the papers in Georgia. Having his name as a client didn't hurt any, and the business quickly gained notoriety. Executive Concierge Inc., or ECI, as I like to call it, was covered in all the state papers and talked about on the radio as the elite personal service for executives on the go. Checking out the competition. One Thursday during the spring of 1995, my phone rang. Hello, thank you for calling Executive Concierge. How may I help you? Hello, can I speak with Carrie? When I glanced at the number on the call display screen and didn't recognize the area code, I thought that it might be Stefan calling from somewhere on the road. But it was a female voice. We dealt with mostly male executives, which always meant extra caution when answering personal calls from ladies. Yes, this is Carrie. How can I help you? I didn't care if someone's wife, his girlfriend, or both called. We offered service with class, but we weren't in the business of passing out information on our clients. Carrie, my name is Sandra, and I'm a good friend of Stefan Harvey. He mentioned you and your company and suggested I give you a call. Oh, he did? I pushed away a sheaf of letters my assistant had just laid on my desk and shook my head as she gave me a questioning look. That was nice of him. Just what is it that I can do for you? Oh, she breathed. Stefan and I were talking about things that he thought I might be good at doing. He told me about your company and what you do. He said you started a concierge business for celebrities and VIPs. You know, very posh, she giggled. Well, he's really been trying to find me a career. And I just knew from his eyes when he was talking about you that he was really proud of what you've done. And, well, maybe I could try that too. He told me he even came up with the name of your company, Executive Concierge Inc. He said you call it ECI for short. Oh, okay. Well, Sandra, do you live here in Atlanta? I put a smile in my voice, even if one never made its way to my lips. Oh, no, I live in Washington, D.C. I would like to learn more about your business because I really need to make some changes in my life. Hmm, I just bet she did. Well, Sandra, since Stefan referred you, I would be happy to send you all of my printed material. That includes our press releases, magazine ads, and brochures detailing what the company offers. I picked up a pen and twitched it back and forth. She was talking a lot, but wasn't saying much. Stefan told me that you two were good friends, so I asked if I could call you because I wanted to find out more, about your company, I mean. He said, sure, and you love to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Of course I would be, and I usually was. But sometimes things and people aren't what they appear to be. This looked like one of those times. He must be pretty comfortable with her to talk about me. But how to define comfortable? What the hell is this all about anyway? He hadn't called me to say anything about sending me a little friend. I tossed the pen aside and scattered the morning's phone messages. If you want me to, if you give me your address or a fax number, I can get the information to you. Thanks, but I would really like to meet you, Carrie. I could fly to Atlanta tomorrow. Give her an A for persistence anyway. I started laughing. Girl, there's no need for you to fly in to get this stuff. It's no problem to send it. Once you receive the package, you can call me and I will go over everything over the phone. The phone gave out a squeak. Oh, no, it's no problem. Plus, I really would like to meet you face to face. I mean, if you have time, I only need an hour of your time. She sounded desperate and naive and terribly interested in getting something from me. But what? Well, if you feel you would like to fly here to meet me to discuss the business, sure, that would be fine. Thank you. And really, any time is fine. I'll make my schedule fit yours. I didn't think Sandra was going to have anything to surprise me with. After checking my calendar, I agreed that the next day would be fine. It was a Saturday, and I was just tidying my desk at noon hour when the phone rang. And sure enough, Sandra was in town. I grabbed my briefcase and keys and headed downtown to Buckhead, where she had checked into the Occidental Grand Hotel, one of the world's elite places to stay, and definitely Atlanta's most expensive. I left my car with the valet, the only way you can park at the Occidental, and entered the hotel. I went up to her room expecting to meet someone plain and insecure who looked a little down on their luck despite the plush surroundings. Much to my surprise, when the door opened, I was facing a tall, leggy, and very beautiful African American woman, young but no junior. She was just freshening up from her trip, so I sat and waited while she finished. After brushing the long brown hair that curled around her shoulders, she shoved it casually behind her ears, put in a pair of diamond stud earrings, then turned around and walked into the bedroom. She came back carrying a pair of black leather knee-high boots that she dropped on the floor next to the sofa where I was sitting. We talked while she took a makeup bag out of her Gucci overnight case and started putting on the finishing touches. I'm sorry, do you mind giving me a few more minutes? No, take your time. She ran into the bedroom again and came back this time with a small leather tote bag that she tossed into the armchair where her jacket was draped. The bright red satin lining in her black jacket caught my attention, as well as the tag that read Versace size 26. Sorry, I'm a little ditzy because I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning and couldn't go back to sleep. I was thinking when I put on these boots that they didn't match my handbag. What? I know it sounds silly, but if my handbag and shoes don't match, I feel incomplete. With both hands, she grabbed everything out of her purse and dropped it into the tote. It was immediately apparent that there were two things we had in common. One, we were both exhausted, her from an early morning flight and me from the pressures of running a successful business. The second thing was we were both hungry. I suggested a restaurant that was part of the Pips Plaza Mall, another prime piece of real estate in an affluent part of Atlanta. After I gave the valet guy my ticket, he brought up my Golf Volkswagen and left the driver's side door open. I walked over, slipped him $2. Then another valet rushed over to open the passenger door for her. I looked across the hood at her. She hadn't moved. Then I guess she caught my expression and blurted out, oh, is this yours? Yes. She got in and the valet closed her door. As I pulled out into traffic, we chatted in the car about the similarities and differences between our cities and the people that live there. Once we arrived to the Phipps Plaza Mall, I valet parked just to impress Sandra. Once we were seated, Sandra ordered light crab salad with no tomatoes, oil and vinegar dressing, and to drink a martini dry, not stirred. I ordered the same entree and a lemon slice for my water. I folded my hands on the table and started talking business. She appeared to be interested since her eyes never wavered from my face. She even gave me a couple of and a nod or two. I had paused just for a moment before switching from identifying your market to marketing your company when she blurted out, "So, tell me, how long have you known Stefan?" "For several years now," I responded, spreading some brochures in front of her, but I can tell that she wasn't interested. "How did you two meet?" "Here in Atlanta." "Right here in Atlanta?" I nodded my head in the direction of the window beside me. She leaned forward a little. "He speaks very highly of you. I can tell by the look on his face when he talks about you that he really likes you. He gets this glassy stare as if he envisions you when he's talking." I tried blowing her off with an, "Oh, really?" Even if she wasn't a stranger to Stefan, I'm not comfortable talking to anyone about our relationship. But I must admit that this sister had my curiosity up. It was plain that the business session was a bust. I gathered up my papers and laid them on top of the briefcase I had toted along. "So, Sandra, are you married?" "No, I'm not married anymore, but I have 2 kids." "Two kids?" I wasn't prepared for that response. "Oh, 2 kids? A boy and a girl, or what?" "Yes, a boy and a girl. Stefan loves my daughter. He thinks it's great that my kids attend the same private school as the mayor's kids." Just for a moment, her face lit up with what looked like a genuine smile. "Uh-huh. Since you don't work, then I guess your ex-husband really helps you out with the kids. I mean, financially and all." She had me playing her game now, make her uneasy, make her doubt Stefan. Was she trying to make me think he was paying her kids' tuition? Well, she wasn't the only one on a fishing expedition, she said. Well, I sort of inherited my money from my ex-husband by default. He got 25 years for embezzlement, and he's been in jail for the last 3 years. She waved a manicure hand lazily. Sandra was on her third martini, dry, not stirred, and some of her veneer was slipping. She amazed me. She really did. As beautiful as she was, I couldn't understand Stefan's interest in her. I'm certain that beauty alone isn't something that he would never jeopardize his career for, much less what he have going. But I am certain there is something going on here. But what beats me? He's so good at lying and tricks that the few times I've questioned him about something, I have never been able to catch him out. It had something to do with drugs, she went on with a dreamy smile. They said it was the largest drug bust that Washington has ever had. To keep my thoughts from showing on my face, I took a sip of my water. What the hell is up with this bitch? Our relationship was rocky and destructive anyway, but at least my home is paid off. So your husband was a fairly good financial planner. I planted my tongue firmly in my cheek. Oh, Carrie, she laughed. Everything that I have was paid for in cash. My homes, cars, furs, and jewelry. You know, the really nice things. I have this $1,500 watch that I showed Stefan when he was over at my house. He couldn't believe all the jewelry that I owned. Oh, crap. We were back to the wide-eyed Barbie doll. Why didn't she just bring me her tax return to show what she was worth? Or did she show that to Stefan too? What was she trying to buy? Information from me or something better from him? He had been in her house. She made a point of letting me know that. Does she want me to assume that something is going on between her and Stefan? Or is she confirming that it is? She was trying awful hard to say something, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was. Is there someone special in your life now, Sandra? I asked. She shrugged. There was nobody special for a while, but now there's someone that I have feelings for. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that things will work out for us. She dropped thick lashes over her eyes, then glanced up at me as if to say, I really shouldn't talk about him, but just ask me and I'll spill my guts. I picked up my glass of water, sipping through a straw and waiting silently to see what other rabbits she was going to pull out of the hat. When I didn't respond, she gave up the game, crossed her arms on the table, and tapped an elegant set of fake nails on the silverware. Listen, Carrie, I only date the cream of the crop, the best of the best. A man have to have it before I give him the time of day. Their long fingers came together and rubbed against each other. Thank goodness. The waiter brought our check before I could tell her what I thought. Suddenly, the mood changed and she got this intense, serious look on her face. Putting her hand lightly on my arm where it lay on the table, she practically oozed sincerity. There's one thing that you need to know about me. When someone tells me something, I keep it confidential. If you told me something about someone, trust me, it wouldn't go any further. She pulled her hand back before I could shake it off and dipped it into the Herm's crocodile tote she brought, coming out with $100 bill. Let me take care of this. She flickered her hand out and Frankie, the waiter, almost fell over his feet getting to the table. Keep the change, she smiled, pressing the bill and check into his hand. While some people would have taken this as a gracious gesture, with Sandra, I felt it was an invitation to divulge personal tidbits about Stefan. And given her little act today, I didn't want that twit doing shit for me. My hand shot out and grabbed the waiter's wrist. No, you're my guest. I'll pay for this, since I can always use another tax write-off. I plucked the bill and check out of his hand, scribbled on the check, and passed the bill back to my guest. Then I pressed my Visa card and a check into his hand with my sweetest southern smile. I knew he wasn't going to be happy with me because our lunch, including her 3 martinis, totaled $62.53, and I only added a percent tip. Carrie, thank you for lunch and adjusting your time to see me. As we stood up, I handed her the business materials that I had brought. After all, that's why she had asked to see me. Well, the reason I was there. I think she came looking for something else. While waiting for my car at the valet stand, she reached over and took hold of my arm. Listen, if someone told me that a certain man I have an interest in has a girlfriend or wife, I would never confront him with it. If somehow he found out that I knew, I wouldn't tell him who told me. I'm very private about relationships. Then she squeezed my arm a little. Do you understand what I am saying? Carrie, I stood there with a fuck you look on my face First of all, this girl was trying her best to act like we are close friends, and she was indirectly asking me to confirm if Stefan has a girlfriend or wife. She's lucky because just as I was going to let her know the game was up, the valet pulled my car around and stopped in front of the line of cars waiting to park. The car is here. Get in. There are people in line behind us waiting, I said, and walked around to the driver's side. I gave the valet a $5 bill and got in. She tossed her bag on the seat and handed the valet on her side a tip, then got in. He closed the door for her. Carrie, are you okay? I'm fine. I just have a little headache. She flew back to DC that evening. We talked on the phone a few times over the next couple of days. Each time she made a point of telling me how she thanks Stefan for bringing us together. Then I got a call from him asking if we had met. What did we talk about? Did I help her out? For him, it was a pretty clumsy approach. She'd already let me know, not too subtly, that she'd seen him. Yes, I did meet her, and I did help her out. Now was not the time to get bitchy. So I answered as if he was as innocent as he was trying to sound. I gave her my business information, but she didn't appear to be interested in any of it. She appeared to be more interested in meeting me for some reason. Even before we got talking, it was obvious she isn't hurting for money. Let him chew on that and see what he can spit out. I thought your business would be perfect for her since she knows a lot of Washington influential people. Maybe she's just sitting down and making plans before she goes ahead. You know, the woman's not as smart as you. That excuse wouldn't stand up if it had crutches. I just said, okay, and left it at that. I knew that I would only get a bull story if I asked what was going on with the two of them. As I saw it, there were two choices: ask him and let him deny, or let it pass by as if I didn't have a clue. That way, he could salvage his ego, and I wouldn't be driving a wedge between us for something I couldn't change anyway. I was confident that it was nothing that wouldn't burn out in time, and it did. He mentioned her in passing almost a year later, just a casual reference about how she'd gotten this idea in her head about being Mrs. Stefan Harvey. I admired her for having the guts to check out the competition, but I was blinded by love and secure in my ignorance. If only I had the guts to confirm our relationship. This was the first time that I had been confronted with the presence of another woman in his life, but it wasn't the last. The king takes a queen. Baby, I'm sorry. I messed up. It's this woman, she and I, well, we got married. That's how he told it. The news came out of nowhere and shattered my complacency, my heart, and my life. He loved me. He might lust after other women, but he loved me. So I have been rolling along with never a thought that there might be someone else. How? When? Why? I felt like dying. I hadn't heard so much as a whisper about this other woman, his wife. It wasn't until 2 months after they tied the knot that would choke the life out of me that Stefan broke the news. The 1996 Olympics were held in Atlanta, Georgia, the same year ECI received the largest service contract from the city ever. We were contracted to provide transportation, maids, shopping, and nanny service to the executive Olympic visitors to the city. I was so involved with my business that I had noticed we weren't talking as frequently. Working day and night over 4 months doing prep work, I didn't even miss our usual 3 to 4 times a week calls. During that time, we were lucky if it was once or twice every 2 weeks. When the business took off, just as his career did, we were both committed to engagements and deals that neither of us could walk out on. After the project, I was exhausted, but I really missed him. Things were just beginning to slow down when I got a strange call from him in the middle of the day. He phoned to say he had canceled that night's performance and was flying to Atlanta, Georgia, my hometown, because he missed me and wanted to talk. I was ecstatic. Stefan had never put me before his career, and the fact that he had done so now made me feel that I was really more important part of his life. Later, I realized that was how he wanted me to feel. not how he felt. What I hoped was the cause for his travel change was all a lie. He was making sure I heard his lie because I was his woman and I'd believe him. Hadn't I always? I took a bath and rubbed my body down with shea butter, anticipating the evening. I slipped on a pink mesh halter baby doll with lace cups and a matching G-string from Victoria's Secrets, just a little something naughty crossed with nice to remind him of the eye candy that he had left behind. When I opened the door, Stefan greeted me with a hug and a gentle kiss on the lips. Then he sat down on the couch and he started rubbing his hands together, moving his head from side to side as if to say, no, no. I knew something was wrong because it's never taken him this long before to notice that I was standing there with my ass cheeks out and smelling good. Carrie, I messed up. She tricked me. A sharp crack punctuated the announcement as he slapped his hands against his temples and reared back against the couch. Holding on to the top of his knees, I knelt down between his legs. Stefan, who tricked you? She who? Baby. He grabbed my face with both of his hands. I have my lawyers working on getting it annulled. Annulled? Marriage came to mind, but we weren't legally married. I was certain that he meant something else. Getting what annulled? I got married. Oh God, he said it. I wrenched my head out of his hands because she told me something that wasn't true. It's funny how being in shock can sometimes magnify your surroundings or blow your circumstances out of proportion. Suddenly, being almost naked embarrassed me. He just told me he was married. Not engaged, but married. I had no idea that he was involved with another woman to the extent of marrying her. For years, I kept telling myself that he loved me, but he couldn't help the way that he loved me. So I tolerated the evasions and kept myself from speculating about the women who seemed to appear at club date after club date. But the way I found out he was married crushed something inside me. I could feel it shrivel, even as he moaned about his mistake. I didn't think anything could hurt as much as when I aborted our child, but I was wrong. He had just aborted us. Is she pregnant? Grabbing the Afghan off the corner of the couch, I stood up and wrapped it around me. He exhaled heavily. Just once before answering, no, she and I are not together. He shrugs as if to say, it's not that important. I don't know where the pregnant question came from. I guess it was just the handiest excuse for his problem. I loved him so much, and together we were hurting. Or so I thought. I was hanging on to the last of my innocence with the desperation of a drowning woman. How did you get married? Where did you get married? Who is she? I spent the question at him. Africa? I bet it was that woman he took to Africa. No, wait. There had been that one in Newark. It's the girl from Oakland that I lived with at that one time before I met you. Look, he jumped up off the couch, forcing me to stumble backwards into the coffee table. I made a mistake. She tricked me. She lied to me. I can't believe what she did to me. I'm trying to get it annulled. I'm trying my best to get it annulled. This is some shit I'm caught up in. She tricked me. It's odd what makes your senses pick up at moments like this. I could swear I heard a little boy whining. His hands were rubbing the legs of his jeans, sweaty palms. He was certainly worried about having been tricked. Or was he just worried about having to break the news? I have known this man for years. How could this woman, any person, trick him? He is the master of tricks and lies. It's what he does for a living, and he's so damn good at it. It didn't make sense, so I tried to make some sense of it. Tell me, how did someone trick you into marrying them? Did the two of you have a wedding? Nothing like a wedding. He reached out a hand, then dropped it. We were together one night, so we flew to Vegas, got married, got back on the plane, and flew back. That was the whole deal. I haven't lived with her since it happened. So you two aren't together. I bit my lip. Please. I just can't understand this. It's too much. I knew what I wanted to hear, and somewhere deep inside, knew that I was going to hear it because that was his ticket out of the trap he had gotten himself caught up in. Listen, Carrie, baby, I love you. But some stuff went down and I had to marry her. His voice was high and tight. Then he grabbed his forehead and yelled, I can't discuss any more right now, but trust me, I'm handling it. Trust. Trust? Trust is what I once had in our relationship. Right then, I didn't even trust myself. I made him leave the house. When he stopped at the door and started up again, I turned my back and walked away. He called the next morning before I was even out of bed. I don't want to talk right now, was all I could manage before dropping the receiver back on the hook. That afternoon, he left for Chicago and the start of another string of high-profile gigs. He called almost every day of the 2 weeks he was on the road. I relented enough not to hang up on him, but I still wasn't ready to talk. Okay, Carrie. His voice was smooth, soothing, and oh so sincere. There's legal matters that need to be worked out in order to resolve this mess. Will you wait for me? Please, baby. Drama King was obviously a better actor than me. Foolish woman. Ultimately, I suppose it was my own fault for wearing my heart on my sleeve where he could see it, analyze what made it beat or skip, and then supply all the answers or push the right buttons to keep me complacent. He was well prepared and well rehearsed. You know what makes a good actor? Someone who is so good, you can't tell when he's performing and when he's not. Stefan Harvey had been giving an Oscar-winning performance for years. The next month, my business ran into a wall and I needed some bridge financing to tide us over. The bank would take too long to decide whether I was overreaching our potential. So for the first time, I went to Stefan and he helped me out, no question asked. The day I discovered that I was still willing to believe him, to trust him, to love him, I saw that helping hand as the way of showing love, and we began talking again. He was going to resolve the nightmare of his marriage, and I would be there for him. Somehow, I missed it. My head had been buried in my work, and I never paid much attention to the smut on television, radio, or in magazines, so it wasn't strange that I didn't know he had gotten married. It hurt to know that he could say he loved me and still stand up before God and a pastor to marry another woman. But as always, I allowed him to love me the way he did, while I convinced myself that he was really getting an annulment. It was like nothing had changed. I began traveling to see him on the road, just like I used to. Oddly enough, the trips were more frequent now than when he didn't have a wife. The first time we made love after I found out he was married to another woman, I curled myself up into a ball and cried. I cried because it was never my desire or wish to be in love with a married man, and I realized that I was. Needless to say, I had given in to his will once more. He convinced me to stay with him even after he crowned someone else his queen and made me his other woman. Never forgetting, never really forgetting, we moved on. What a performance. Operating ECI required me to be home more than usual, so he would call me often while on the road. He had a manager with him, which meant he wasn't alone, and I figured naively that he couldn't get into any more scraps. For once I started to focus on myself, if he didn't know I was hurting, then I only had myself to blame. I didn't talk about what was going on inside me because I had become accustomed to bearing my feelings to protect his. So he didn't know what was happening. He didn't know that every waking moment when I had to deal with how his success had changed our lives, I was reminded of what I had done to assure that he would reach his dream. In many ways, I was as naive then as I had been years earlier when we first met. But I could now read between the lines if I chose to. In 1997, just when it seemed as though the hype of ECI was dying, his career was beginning to flourish. He was already in the second season of his television show. I knew Stefan didn't like to discuss personal business, but it had been 9 months since I last heard him mention the annulment. Besides, I never volunteered to be his permanent other woman, and I had the right to know. The summer of 1997, he did an HBO special and called it X, Please Would You Come? Since the Coliseum where he was performing was on the outskirts of Atlanta, I decided that I would go and drive. But before I left town earlier that day, I called the courthouse in Oakland to inquire about annulments and the process. Armed with the legal process of when and how an annulment is granted, I got on the road and headed east. When I checked into the hotel, I went to the front desk and told them who I was. There was an envelope at the front desk with my name on it. He had left his own room key for me. The bellhop carrying my bag escorted me to his suite. He had asked me to spend the night, but I was feeling really unsettled. I packed the bag just in case I decided to stay the night with him. Since he was already at the Coliseum getting ready for his show, he sent a limousine back to the hotel for me. When I got to the show, the driver escorted me to a handsome young white man with a receiver in his ear that connected the two-way radio on his hip. "Terry?" he asked while turning the knob on the top of his radio. "Yes." "Hi, my name is Rob, and Mr. Harvey asked me to look out for you. He said you would be arriving soon." With one of his hands, he pressed on the side of his ear, then said, "She's here. I have Terry with me." At first, his talking into thin air startled me until I realized that his earpiece was also a mic. He touched my shoulder lightly and said, "Carrie, you can come with me." He turned to the driver and stuck out his right hand. "Thanks, man. I'll see that she gets to where she needs to be." Rob, my escort, picked up my will call ticket that Stefan had put aside for me. I slipped backstage just for a few moments to say hello. It was HBO's camera people, clipboards and two ways everywhere you looked. It was chaotic in his dressing room as well, with all the people in there fussing over him. I whispered to Rob, who was standing less than 3 feet from me, that I was ready to go out front. My seat was in the first row, directly in front of the stage. When he came out, he looked beautiful. He looked like he was on cloud nine, larger than life. That was Stefan Harvey. I was so proud of him that night. He looked like the show was already a smash and it hadn't even started. He had faith in capital letters. I had seen that faith in him early in our relationship, but now it was casting a glow onto the audience that was brighter than the spotlights. He knows how to reach out and draw you into his world. What can I say? He's a showman every minute of his life. He started out talking about hip hop music and the purpose it served. His opinion was it served none. Then he had the DJ play smidgens of Barry White, Gerald Levert, and a little of Luther Vandross. He called this music old school. He said, "Brother, if you play this kind of music and sing it to a lady when you know you've done wrong, it relaxes her. It helps smooth things over while the two of you are talking. Also, you may want to add in a little back rubbing while you're talking." Now, let's take another look at hip hop. There's no way that it can smooth anything with your girl when she is hearing you sing words from a song that calls her something less than a good woman. Trust me, she's going to remember all the wrong that your trifling ass has done. She's probably going to make up some too. He talked about his parents, as he always did, and his father being a hard man, but a good man. Then my body froze. My heart started to beat faster and louder. I couldn't feel it struggling to escape my chest. With a motion from his hand, I caught the flash of gold on his finger. No, it's not. He's wearing a wedding ring. I kept repeating, no, he's not. And beating my fist on my knee. My fingers were curled in so tightly that two nails cut the skin of my palm. He had his wedding band on while he performed. When I joined him backstage, he didn't have it on in my presence. That bastard. I went backstage with my head held high. I might be the other woman, but I was his woman. First, I went into his private dressing room. We hugged, played, and kissed. He asked me to attend a celebration in his honor back at the hotel, and I agreed. His attorney and friends were throwing a party in a private suite. It was obvious right then and there that money could buy you power and silence. I waited patiently with him for all the well wishes to leave, and then we left together. Everyone at the party was a personal friend of Stefan. They all knew his wife, yet only one of them mentioned her the whole time I was there. Stories about someone having two families that they kept secret from each other never surprised me for two reasons. Silence can be paid for, and the rest don't want to get involved. It was hard for me to walk in there knowing that they had all been part of the conspiracy to keep his marriage a secret. So I was surprised when they seemed genuinely pleased to see how happy we were together. Still, a tiny voice niggled at the back of my brain, wondering if this too was a conspiracy and did they hide me from his wife? I shoved the thoughts back in the dark where they belonged and slammed my mind shut on them. These were his people, a personal assistant, manager, bodyguard, and others that I wasn't familiar with. His attorney was there, as well as his personal barber from Oakland, and the makeup artist for his stage shows and television appearances. Now that they knew I was aware of his marriage, or at least as aware as he made me, I wasn't sure how they'd react, and their welcome was a pleasant surprise. They were all very genuine and treated me part of the team except for one woman. When I extended a hand to his makeup artist to introduce myself, she shook it with reluctance, still holding my hand so that I was sure to get the full force of her introduction. She said, "My name is Sharon, and I am very good friends with Marlon, his wife." I continued to shake, then gracefully removed my hand from hers. "Oh, really? How nice for you both," I replied before turning away. After my comeback, the room went quiet. I was embarrassed, but I had embarrassed myself by accepting the role that Stefan had cast for me. It was obvious that her goal was to make me feel dirty for being the type of woman that every married woman hates. Well, she accomplished her task, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing it. Actually, I saluted her because she had the guts to say what the other spineless kiss asses didn't. He may be the boss, but I'm a wife, and I stand in support of his. She laid it out, plain and simple. My friends would have done the same thing. Stefan was standing over by the door to the suite. I patted him on the chest, looked him in the eye, and told him I was ready to leave. For once, he must have been paying attention. His eyes flickered away to the crowd, then back to me, and he made a gracious excuse to the host. Then the two of us left. Stefan and I got to the elevator, and I turned my back to him. He asked what was wrong. I was upset and embarrassed from being on the defensive in front of the entire room full of his friends. Through clenched jaws, I told him what had happened at the party. He didn't say a word until we got inside his suite. There wasn't so much as a flicker of emotion on his face. Not regret, embarrassment, anger, nothing. Then came his stock in trade, putting the blame on someone else. He yanked off his tie, threw it on the nearest chair, and rounded on me. "She's just jealous of you. She took one look at you and said, 'I don't like her because she looks better than me.' Nothing was ever his fault. I am beginning to believe that nobody can beat him in line. He's that good." It was amazing how he worked himself up into a sweat, making you believe that. I watched him pace, running hands through his hair and his voice rising as he got to his point. "That makeup girl, she likes me. That's the reason why she's trying to hurt you. She took one look and saw you as competition. She wants me, and she ain't happy. It's jealousy, nothing else. Her problem is everybody knows she comes on to me. The stupid bitch got a big mouth and talks a lot. So everybody knows she looking for something she ain't gonna get. She doesn't have the right to tell you shit. She doesn't know my wife. My wife doesn't even know her name. They ain't good friends. Who the hell does she think she is? She doesn't know nothing about my marriage. She doesn't know shit about what's going on in my life. My wife is not even allowed to come on set. We ain't even together. How the hell would they get to be good friends?" He stopped in front of me, arms spread wide. After all, he had no secrets. And being the woman I let him make of me, I believed him. I never questioned what he told me. Why bother? A man will lie when the truth will do. And I wanted so badly to hear the truth that I did, even when it was a lie. If you're upset, I can understand if you don't want to stay with me tonight. Now, I want you to, but I want what's best for you more. Really? I should have tested him, taken it further to see if he meant what he said. But I didn't because I loved him. Instead of putting space between us where I could think, I moved into his arms so I wouldn't have to. It was such an emotionally charged night that after making love, neither of us was ready to sleep. I slipped on the red silk teddy and went out to where he was sitting on the couch. I lay down with my body across his lap and my head against his chest. I kissed him a few times and told him how proud I was of him and the way he performed. Timing is everything when it comes to Stefan getting to talk about his personal life. Once I felt him relax, I asked about ending his marriage. Stefan, what is the status of the annulment? I called the courthouse and they said it doesn't normally take 9 months. Truthfully, they said they've never heard of it taking that long, ever. We lived in different states, and because he was on the road traveling during his show's hiatus with 3 other comedy kings, I didn't always know what was going on. But I was going to find out. Tell me the truth. Are you and this woman together? No, we are not, Carrie. She is not even allowed in my studio, let alone on my set. His reply was as casual as if I asked him to pass me the newspaper. Are you still getting an annulment? With the twist of his shoulder, he shoved me off his lap and stood up abruptly, walking over to the window and staring out at the night. The tone of his voice was clipped and disapproving. My circumstances are a little bit more complicated. It may take a while, but I am getting out of it. Is that the truth? I asked. When he turned to face me, he was wearing the mask of a wounded innocent. Carrie, have I ever lied to you? I should have jumped up and screamed, yes, 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 as a matter of fact, loud enough for the whole floor of rooms to hear. I should have challenged him with how he got married and didn't tell me about it until 2 months later. But I didn't. Stefan was the master of illusion and delusion. Maybe he really did believe what he said wasn't lying. Or maybe he lied to make it seem like he was innocent. He either deluded me or deluded himself. It has been going on so long, I had come to accept it as part of who he was. So I let the topic drop. Once he saw me bagging off, he became animated again. The show had been a big success, and he knew it. He was on a high. It was better than good. It was great. As usual, when his emotions were stimulated, so was the rest of him. We were back in bed having sex before I had time to think. The next morning, he had to leave early to get on the road. I woke to his goodbye kiss, then he was gone. I got up, showered, and dressed, then headed back to Atlanta. I never did ask about that ring on his finger. Stay tuned for the 3rd and final book reading of Men Will Lie When the Truth Will Do, The King, His Queen, and His Other Woman, written by the author TERRI Smith. And if you haven't already done so, please make sure you go over to Genevas Closet YouTube channel and check out these other videos that I did, people. It's practically a series. Steve Harvey's White Slave Masters, Steve Harvey, Wife and Side Chicks, and the first book reading, Steve Harvey and Side Chick Relationship Revealed. And if you would like to advertise your business in Genevas Closet, you can email me at genevascloset22@gmail.com. Please like and share this video and subscribe to Genevas Closet if you haven't already done so right here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Facebook at Genevas Closet. And you can email me at genevascloset22@gmail.com. You all have a fabulous day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.